Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman Audiobook Summary. Introduction. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you make snap decisions in seconds, and other times you wrestle for hours over a simple choice? Why do you instantly recognize a friend's face in a crowd, but struggle when asked to multiply 47 by 83? This paradox of human thinking is what Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist and economist, explores in his groundbreaking book Thinking, Fast and Slow. Kahneman reveals that our minds operate with two distinct systems of thought. The first is fast thinking, automatic, intuitive, and emotional. It helps us survive by reacting instantly, but it often leads to biases and errors. The second is slow thinking, deliberate, logical, and effortful. It helps us solve problems with reason, but it's lazy and often gives way to fast thinking. The core message of this book is simple yet powerful. Much of what we think is rational decision-making is actually driven by unconscious mental shortcuts. These shortcuts, while useful, can also mislead us in business, money, relationships, and life itself. In this audiobook summary, we will explore the key ideas of thinking, fast and slow in a clear, engaging way. You'll discover how your brain uses shortcuts that can betray you, why you are more biased than you realize, and how understanding these two systems of thought can improve your decisions, your happiness, and even your success. By the end of this journey, you'll never look at your own thinking the same way again. Now hit the subscribe button. Let's begin with the foundation, the two systems of thinking that guide every decision you make. Part 1: Two Systems of Thinking. Imagine you're walking down the street and suddenly hear someone shout your name. Without thinking, you instantly turn your head. That's fast thinking. Now imagine you're asked to solve this problem. 17 multiplied by 24. You pause, maybe reach for a pen, and start calculating step by step. That's slow thinking. Daniel Kahneman calls these two modes of thought System 1 and System 2. And understanding how they work, and how they clash, is the foundation of his book. System 1, the fast thinker. System 1 is automatic, quick, and intuitive. It runs effortlessly in the background of your mind, making split-second judgments without asking for permission. When you dodge a car without consciously thinking. When you instantly recognize a face you haven't seen in years. When you finish the phrase, bread and with butter. That's System 1 at work. It's emotional, instinctive, and incredibly efficient. Without it, we couldn't survive day to day. But here's the catch: System 1 is also prone to error. It jumps to conclusions. It relies on patterns, stereotypes, and mental shortcuts. It can make you believe something is true simply because it feels true. System 2, the slow thinker. System 2, on the other hand, is deliberate, effortful, and logical. It's the system you engage when you tackle a complex problem or carefully weigh a decision. Planning your monthly budget. Learning a new skill. Comparing mortgage rates before buying a home. System 2 requires focus and energy. It's not automatic, you have to call on it. And because it demands effort, your brain often avoids using it unless absolutely necessary. Think of System 2 like the slow but reliable accountant inside your head. It doesn't rush, but when accuracy matters, it's the system you want in control. The tension between systems. Here's the problem: System 1 is always running, while System 2 is lazy. System 2 would prefer to take shortcuts and trust System 1 whenever possible. This works fine for everyday situations, but it becomes dangerous when quick judgments lead us astray. For example, you see a well-dressed person and immediately assume they're competent. That's System 1 jumping to conclusions. You meet someone smiling warmly and think they're trustworthy, even if you know nothing about them. Again, that's System 1. System 2 could step in and question these assumptions, but often, it doesn't. A simple test. Here's a famous example from Kahneman's research. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Did you think 10 cents? That's System 1 answering. Fast, intuitive, and wrong. The correct answer is 5 cents. If the ball costs 5 cents, the bat costs $1.05, totaling $1.10. To reach that answer, you had to engage System 2, slow, logical thinking. This illustrates the tension perfectly. System 1 offers quick but often flawed answers. System 2 can correct them, but only if it wakes up and puts in the effort. Everyday implications. Understanding these two systems is more than just theory, it explains much of human behavior. Why advertisers rely on emotions instead of facts. Why political campaigns use simple slogans instead of complex arguments. Why we sometimes make impulsive purchases or fall for scams. System 1 is powerful, but it's also gullible. It believes stories. It believes what feels right. And unless we train ourselves to pause and let System 2 kick in, we remain vulnerable to errors in judgment. So, here's the key takeaway. System 1 is fast, intuitive, emotional, and always running. System 2 is slow, deliberate, rational, but lazy. Together, they shape every thought, judgment, and decision you make. Kahneman's message is clear. If you want to make better decisions, you must learn to recognize when your fast, intuitive brain is leading you astray, and deliberately engage your slower, more logical brain. Now that we understand how the two systems work, let's explore how System 1, the fast thinker, uses mental shortcuts called heuristics, and how those shortcuts often trick us into making poor decisions. Part 2, Heuristics and Biases. We've learned that System 1 is fast, automatic, and intuitive, while System 2 is slow, logical, but lazy. Now the big question is, how does System 1 actually make decisions so quickly? The answer is, heuristics. What are heuristics? Heuristics are mental shortcuts, rules of thumb that help us make judgments quickly without deep thinking. They're incredibly useful. Without them, we'd be paralyzed, unable to decide even the simplest things. But here's the problem. While heuristics save time, they also introduce biases, systematic errors in judgment. And these errors affect everything, from how we spend money, to who we trust, to how we vote. Let's explore some of the most powerful, and dangerous, biases uncovered by Kahneman and his colleagues. 1. The anchoring effect. Imagine you're asked, is the tallest redwood tree taller or shorter than 1,200 feet? Then you're asked, what's your best guess of its height? Most people guess numbers close to 1,200, even though the real answer is around 370 feet. Why? Because the first number they heard, 1,200, anchored their judgment. This is the anchoring effect, when an initial number influences our final decision, even if it's irrelevant. Think about shopping. A shirt marked $150, now only $75. Feels like a great deal, not because $75 is cheap, but because your brain anchored to $150. Marketers, negotiators, and even real estate agents use anchoring to shape your perception of value. 2. The availability heuristic. Here's a question: what kills more people every year, shark attacks or falling airplane parts? Most people say sharks. Why? Because shark attacks are dramatic, memorable, and heavily covered in the media. But the truth is, falling airplane parts kill more people annually than sharks. This is the availability heuristic. We judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. If you've just watched a plane crash on the news, you might feel flying is unsafe, even though statistically, driving is far more dangerous. Availability makes us misjudge risks, exaggerate dangers, and fear the wrong things. 3. The representativeness heuristic. Meet Linda. Linda is 31 years old, single, outspoken, and deeply concerned about social justice. Which is more likely? A. Linda is a bank teller. B. Linda is a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. Most people choose option B. But mathematically, that's impossible. The probability of two things being true together is always less than the probability of one thing being true. This is the representativeness heuristic. We judge based on stereotypes or how much something seems to fit, rather than actual statistics. It explains why people buy lottery tickets because someone has to win, or why we fall for stories that sound plausible, even when the math doesn't add up. 4. Substitution, when the brain cheats. Sometimes, when faced with a hard question, System 1 quietly substitutes an easier one without telling you. For example, if asked, "How happy are you with your life these days?" That's a complex question. But many people actually answer, "How happy am I right now?" This substitution makes us confident in our answer, but it's not the answer we were asked. Our brains simply took a shortcut. Why biases matter. At first, these shortcuts may sound harmless. But think about it. Anchoring can make you overpay for a house. Availability can make you fear the wrong risks and ignore real dangers. Representativeness can make you fall for stereotypes or make bad investments. Substitution can make you answer the wrong question without realizing it. Kahneman's research shows that these errors aren't random, they're predictable. Our brains are wired to make these mistakes, again and again. The illusion of rationality. Here's the surprising truth: we are far less rational than we believe. Most of the time, System 1 is in charge, guiding our decisions with shortcuts and emotions. System 2 steps in only occasionally, often too late. This is why humans consistently make the same errors in judgment, even when they're educated, experienced, or confident. So, what have we learned? Heuristics are mental shortcuts that save time but often mislead us. Anchoring, availability, representativeness, and substitution are key biases that distort our thinking. These biases shape the way we shop, invest, negotiate, vote, and even see the world. The lesson is not that heuristics are bad, they're essential for everyday life. The real lesson is this: we must learn to recognize when System 1's shortcuts are leading us astray, and deliberately engage System 2 to think more carefully. Now that we've uncovered how biases distort our decisions, let's move to the next trap of human thinking: overconfidence. Why do we believe we know more than we actually do? And how does this illusion of certainty lead to poor choices? Part 3: Overconfidence. If there's one bias that Kahneman says is most dangerous to success, it's this: overconfidence. We often think we understand the world more than we actually do. We believe we can predict the future, explain the past, and control outcomes. But the truth is, we live in far more uncertainty than our brains are willing to admit. The illusion of understanding. Think back to the last time you read a news story about a company's rise or fall. Perhaps you thought, "Of course that happened. The signs were obvious." But here's the reality: before it happened, those signs weren't obvious at all. This is what Kahneman calls the illusion of understanding. Once we know the outcome of an event, our minds rewrite the story to make it seem predictable. This is why business failures, political elections, or even financial crashes often look inevitable in hindsight. But if you had been asked to predict those events before they happened, you would have struggled. Our brains are experts at storytelling after the fact, but very poor at genuine foresight. Hindsight bias. I knew it all along. This brings us to hindsight bias, the tendency to believe, after an event occurs, that we knew it was coming. Ask people about a shocking election result, a stock market crash, or even a friend's breakup, and many will say, "I saw it coming." But did they? Or are they simply revising their memory to feel more certain? Hindsight bias makes us overconfident in our ability to predict the future, because the past feels so explainable. The planning fallacy. Another powerful example of overconfidence is the planning fallacy. Think about the last time you planned a project, maybe a home renovation, a school assignment, or even writing a book. You probably thought, this will take about 2 weeks. But it ended up taking 2 months. Kahneman found that people almost always underestimate how long tasks will take, how much they will cost, and what obstacles will arise. Why? Because we imagine the best-case scenario and ignore potential setbacks. Our brains are naturally optimistic when it comes to our own plans. This overconfidence leads companies to go over budget, governments to overspend, and individuals to set unrealistic deadlines. The illusion of validity. Here's a striking experiment from Kahneman's career. While working with the Israeli military, he and his colleagues designed tests to predict which recruits would become successful leaders. They were confident in their assessments, until they followed up years later and discovered their predictions were no better than chance. Yet, even after seeing the evidence, the examiners still felt confident in their judgments the next time. This is the illusion of validity, believing your judgment is accurate, even when repeated evidence proves otherwise. We humans love confidence. We trust confident leaders, confident salespeople, confident experts. But confidence is not the same as accuracy. Overconfidence in business and investing. Perhaps the most costly impact of overconfidence is in the business and financial world. Entrepreneurs often believe their startup will succeed, even though statistics show that most fail. Investors believe they can beat the market, even when data shows very few consistently do. This optimism drives innovation, yes, but it also drives reckless risk-taking, failed ventures, and financial losses. Kahneman warns, the world is far more unpredictable than we like to admit. Believing otherwise is a recipe for disappointment. Why do we fall for overconfidence? There are three main reasons. 1. We love stories. Our minds prefer a clean narrative over messy uncertainty. 2. We hate randomness. So we invent patterns and explanations where none exist. 3. Confidence feels good. It reassures us, even if it's false. In fact, research shows that confident people are more persuasive and more likely to be trusted, even if they're wrong. So here's the truth about overconfidence. We think we know more than we do. We underestimate uncertainty. We overestimate our ability to predict and control outcomes. Kahneman's warning is clear: confidence is not a measure of accuracy. The most confident voices are not necessarily the most correct. The lesson is to stay humble, question your certainty, and remember that the world is far more unpredictable than your mind admits. Now that we've seen how overconfidence blinds us, let's move to another key discovery: Kahneman's Nobel Prize-winning insight, prospect theory. This groundbreaking idea explains why people value losses and gains so differently, and why this quirk shapes everything from investing to gambling to everyday choices. Part 4: Choices and Prospect Theory. When it comes to making choices, we often like to think of ourselves as rational calculators, measuring pros and cons, weighing risks and rewards, and picking the smartest option. But Kahneman's research shows that we don't actually evaluate outcomes logically. Instead, our brains are wired to see the world in terms of gains and losses. And more importantly, we hate losing far more than we enjoy winning. This insight is called prospect theory, a revolutionary idea that reshaped economics and psychology forever. Loss aversion. Losing hurts more than winning feels good. Imagine this: I flip a coin. If it lands heads, you win $100. If it lands tails, you lose $100. Would you take the bet? Most people say no. Why? Because the pain of losing $100 feels about twice as powerful as the joy of winning $100. This is loss aversion, the cornerstone of prospect theory. We don't treat gains and losses equally. Losses weigh heavier on our emotions and decisions. Framing effects: how choices are presented changes decisions. Here's an example from Kahneman's famous experiments. Imagine a disease outbreak expected to kill 600 people. You're given two options. Program A: 200 people will be saved. Program B: there's a 1/3 chance that 600 people will be saved, and a 2/3 chance that no one will be saved. Most people choose Program A, the safe option. But now, look at this version. Program C: 400 people will die. Program D: there's a 1/3 chance no one will die, and a 2/3 chance all 600 will die. Logically, Program A and Program C are identical. So are B and D. But when the outcome is framed as lives lost instead of lives saved, people choose differently. This is the framing effect. Our choices depend not just on facts, but on how those facts are presented. Why we gamble and why we avoid risk. Prospect theory also explains our puzzling behavior when it comes to risk. When faced with potential gains, we often become risk-averse. We prefer a sure win over a gamble, even if the gamble has a higher expected value. But when faced with potential losses, we suddenly become risk-seeking. We'd rather gamble to avoid a loss, even if it means a bigger risk. For example, offered a sure gain of $500, most people take it rather than gamble for a 50% chance at $1,200. But offered a sure loss of $500, most people gamble to avoid the loss, even if the odds are against them. This explains why people hold on to losing investments, hoping to avoid the pain of a realized loss. And why gamblers keep playing after losses, chasing the chance to get even. Real-life implications. Prospect theory isn't just theory, it explains human behavior in countless areas. Investing. Investors panic and sell during downturns because losses feel unbearable, even when holding might be smarter. Insurance. People overpay for insurance because avoiding potential losses feels more important than the mathematical odds. Negotiations. Loss framing makes offers more persuasive. For example, if you don't act now, you'll lose $200, is more powerful than you could save $200. Marketing. Don't miss out. Works better than. Here's a bonus. Marketers tap directly into our fear of loss. The certainty effect and possibility effect. Kahneman also discovered that we treat certainty and possibility in strange ways. We overvalue certainty. A guaranteed win feels disproportionately better than a high probability win. We also overvalue small chances. That's why people buy lottery tickets despite the astronomical odds. Our brains don't weigh probabilities rationally, we distort them through emotion. The big takeaway of prospect theory. Prospect theory overturns the idea of the rational human in classical economics. We are not purely logical decision makers. We are emotional creatures who fear losses, overvalue certainty, and get swayed by how choices are framed. This is why Kahneman's work was revolutionary. It explained why markets behave irrationally, why people make poor financial decisions, and why human psychology must be factored into economics. So here's the summary of prospect theory. We feel losses twice as strongly as equivalent gains. How choices are framed, gain or loss, changes our decisions. We become risk-averse with gains but risk-seeking with losses. We distort probabilities, overvaluing certainty and small chances. The lesson? If you want to make smarter choices, don't just look at the numbers. Pay attention to how the situation is framed. And recognize how loss aversion may be pushing you into irrational decisions. Now that we've explored how we judge gains and losses, let's move to another fascinating part of Kahneman's work, the two selves. Why is it that our experiencing self, the one living life in the moment, often disagrees with our remembering self, the one that tells the story afterward? And how does this strange split affect how we pursue happiness? Part 5. The Two Selves, Experiencing versus Remembering. Close your eyes for a moment and think about your last vacation. What comes to mind? Maybe the breathtaking sunset, the amazing dinner, or that one stressful flight delay. Notice something: you didn't replay every single moment, you recalled highlights and endings. This reveals a profound truth Daniel Kahneman discovered: we each have two selves. The experiencing self, the one who lives in the present, moment by moment. The remembering self, the one who looks back and tells the story of our life. These two selves don't always agree. And this disagreement shapes not only our memories but also our pursuit of happiness. The experiencing self. The experiencing self is the you that lives in real time. Eating an ice cream cone. Listening to your favorite song. Sitting in traffic, feeling frustrated. This self lives in the now. Each moment lasts about 3 seconds. When the moment passes, it's gone, unless it's recorded by the remembering self. Kahneman points out something shocking: our experiencing self has no voice. It doesn't decide what gets remembered. Most of life's moments vanish unnoticed. The remembering self. The remembering self is very different. It's the storyteller. It takes snapshots of your experiences, stitches them together, and builds the narrative of your life. But here's the problem. The remembering self doesn't remember all moments equally. Instead, it relies on two rules. 1. Peak moments, the most intense parts, whether good or bad. 2. The ending. How the experience concludes. This is called the peak end rule. The peak end rule in action. Imagine two patients undergoing a medical procedure. Patient A experiences 10 minutes of steady pain, then the procedure ends. Patient B experiences the same 10 minutes of pain, followed by 5 extra minutes of milder discomfort. Logically, patient B suffered longer. But when asked afterward, patient B remembers the experience as less painful overall. Why? Because the ending was softer, and the memory was shaped by the peak and the end, not the duration. This explains why people often choose to repeat experiences that, in the moment, were unpleasant, but are remembered as not so bad. Happiness, living versus remembering. This leads to a profound insight. There are two kinds of happiness. Experiential happiness, how happy you are in the moment, day by day. Remembered happiness, how happy you think you are when you look back. For example, during a vacation, your experiencing self may have moments of stress, long lines, missed buses, sunburns. But later your remembering self may describe it as an amazing trip, because of a few peak highlights and a happy ending. So, which self do we live for? The one experiencing life in real time, or the one remembering and telling the story later? Kahneman argues that much of what we do, taking photos, finishing strong, seeking milestones, is really for the remembering self. Why this matters? This split between the two selves has huge implications. Decisions about the future are often made by the remembering self, even though it's the experiencing self that will live through them. We may choose longer but more memorable vacations over truly relaxing ones. We may pursue achievements not for the joy of the moment, but for the story they give us afterward. This explains why people chase status, trophies, and Instagram-worthy moments. They make the memory more than they make the moment. The danger of misalignment. Here's the paradox. The experiencing self cares about time. Every moment matters. The remembering self cares about story. Only highlights and endings matter. This means we can actually live unhappy lives in the moment, but still believe we are happy, because the story sounds good. For example, someone may spend decades working stressful hours, sacrificing health and relationships, only to look back and say, "It was worth it, I'd built a successful career." That's the remembering self talking. But the experiencing self suffered along the way. So here's the key takeaway. You are not one self, but two, the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self lives moment to moment, but vanishes quickly. The remembering self creates the story, guided by the peak end rule. Much of what we call happiness depends not on how we live, but on how we remember. The lesson is to ask yourself, am I making this choice for the me who experiences it, or the me who remembers it? With this insight, Kahneman shows us that understanding our two selves can change how we think about happiness, success, and even the meaning of life. Now, let's bring everything together. In our conclusion, we'll recap the 5 big ideas of thinking, fast and slow, and discuss how you can apply them in your daily life to make smarter decisions, avoid costly mistakes, and live more intentionally. Conclusion. We've reached the end of our journey through Daniel Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow. It's a book that doesn't just teach you about psychology, it teaches you about yourself. And the truth is both humbling and empowering. Our minds are not nearly as rational as we believe. Let's recap the 5 core lessons we've learned. Lesson 1. The 2 systems of thinking. You now know that your brain runs on 2 modes. System 1, the fast, intuitive, emotional brain that handles most of your daily decisions. System 2, the slow, deliberate, logical brain that can correct mistakes, but is often lazy. The key takeaway: don't blindly trust your instincts. When the stakes are high, slow down, question your first reaction, and engage System 2. Lesson 2: Heuristics and Biases. System 1 uses mental shortcuts, called heuristics, to make quick judgments. They save time but often lead to predictable errors such as anchoring, letting the first number you see shape your judgment. Availability, confusing what's easy to recall with what's actually true. Representativeness, trusting stereotypes over statistics. The key takeaway: recognize when your mind is using shortcuts. Ask yourself, am I judging based on facts, or just on what feels obvious? Lesson 3: Overconfidence. We all fall prey to the illusion of understanding, hindsight bias, and the planning fallacy. We think we know more than we do, remember the past as more predictable than it was, and underestimate time and costs. The key takeaway: be humble about what you know. Treat confidence with caution. And remember, the world is far more uncertain than it appears. Lesson 4: Prospect Theory and Loss Aversion. Kahneman's Nobel-winning work showed that we value losses and gains unequally. Losing hurts about twice as much as winning feels good. The way a problem is framed, as gains or losses, changes our choices. We are risk-averse with gains, but risk-seeking with losses. The key takeaway: be aware of how loss aversion drives your decisions. Don't let the fear of losing blind you to opportunities. And pay attention to framing. Sometimes simply rephrasing a choice can reveal a smarter path. Lesson 5: The Two Selves, Experiencing versus Remembering. We are not one self, but two. The experiencing self lives in the moment. The remembering self tells the story afterward. But the remembering self doesn't record everything, it focuses on peaks and endings. This explains why your memories of an experience may differ drastically from what you actually felt in the moment. The key takeaway: ask yourself, am I living for the moment, or for the story I'll tell later? True happiness may come from balancing both. Bringing it all together. So, what does this all mean for your life? It means learning to pause. To recognize when your fast brain is tricking you. To question your overconfidence. To frame decisions carefully. And to live with awareness, not just for the story you'll remember, but for the life you're actually experiencing. You cannot eliminate your biases. You cannot shut off System 1. But you can learn to catch yourself, to slow down, and to make better choices in the moments that matter most. Kahneman's message is clear: understanding how you think is the first step to thinking better. Final words. Thank you for joining me in this 40-minute summary of thinking, fast and slow. If you found these ideas valuable, don't let them stay here. Apply them in your daily decisions. Share them with others. And most importantly, keep training yourself to notice when your brain is on autopilot. And if you enjoyed this audiobook summary, please share it with your friends and subscribe for more audiobooks like this. Your support helps us bring you more wisdom from the world's best books, delivered in a way that fits into your busy life. This is not just about learning psychology, it's about living more wisely, more intentionally, and more fully. So remember, think fast when you must, but think slow when it matters.